Minister Nobu Wangchuk, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
As we know that Bhutan has been pursuing gross national happiness policy, how do you see challenges in maintaining gross national happiness policy? And on the other hand, you also want to have economic growth.
Okay, first of all, this gross national happiness philosophy is actually very deeply rooted in the Bhutanese belief system. And all along, for centuries, Bhutanese have believed that that we have man and nature must live in harmony, and men and men amongst men again. By men, I also include women there. So the human beings must coexist. I think it comes from this belief of interdependence, that we are dependent on each other. Nature is dependent on human beings, just as human beings are dependent on nature. And therefore, this belief has now come to be articulated as gross national happiness. Of course, the challenges are there. The challenges are there because all around the world, the challenge to modernize, the challenge to develop is there. We are feeling that challenges as well. But we have put in institutions, we have put in necessary legislations in place so that we are able to pursue gross national happiness for a long, long period of time.
What do you see is the most difficult aspect in pursuing GNH policy?
To be honest, is the world around us. And Bhutan is challenged because just one country cannot have gross national happiness unless the world around and everybody believes in that and at least tries to go that path. Because for instance, in Bhutan, as part of our gross national happiness, we try to preserve our environment so that this effort of preserving the environment benefits the world at large, not just Bhutan. But then if the world around us are reckless with our environment, the pollution around the others would then have effect in Bhutan as well. So on that front, it is a challenge.
So thus in practice, it must be really difficult for you to pursue this in practice because the world around you, the world around Bhutan is always changing very fast with economic growth in terms of following GDP, but you have GNH. How would Bhutan keep this pace of fast changing of outside world?
Well, Bhutan has had a choice, and it had a choice long time back, and the choice was to develop like any other countries. And we could have done this if it was on the GDP path, because we have huge resources, we have huge forest base, we have rich mineral resources, and we now have the hydropower electricity. We could extract the resources, we could cut the forest, and we could become very rich in the GDP context. But what we have realized is that this is not the future for any country, not just for Bhutan. The future for any country, and also for Bhutan, is that the development must have human beings at the core. And human beings need not just the material need. Human beings have emotional need. Human being has the need to identify itself. Human beings have emotional need, social need. So all of these must be in balance, be able to come to fruition. Therefore, we believe that we have been able to manage thus far.
Do you think Bhutanese people have to sacrifice something in order for the whole country to pursue this policy?
Well, if you look into it at a superficial level, we would feel that there is this immediate sacrifices we are making. Like for instance, we would also love to drive big cars. So we like to have material development. We like to have a lot of factories and then have employment generated, and therefore everybody must prosper and become rich like many other countries. But we have to be cautious, because we could be rich, but it could be at the expense of, for instance, our culture, for instance, our value system, for instance, our well-being. So therefore, we are cautious on that front.
I visited farmers market, the weekend market, and I asked some vendors whether they really understand what G&H mean. They said it's quite abstract and far from their real life. They just don't know, but what they care of is to survive economically. How would you explain to them, for those people who don't really get it, what G&H mean?
Yeah, G&H, we have not learned to articulate G&H. We don't try to define G&H. In fact, the rest of the world who had now come across G&H, they are better at articulating G&H. But for us and for people that you have met from the villages, what is important is that while they would not be able to say what is G&H, but if you interact with them and live their lives, observe their lives, you would find that they are living G&H. And what is G&H? G&H is in a way very simple. Being able to live in a family, being able to share the joys of the family, being able to have respect for the environment, respect for each other, and preserving our culture, and ensuring that the value system that we have is passed on to our children and then the future generation. And that is happening as a way of life for Bhutanese.
In order to describe the whole concept to the outside world, as you are Minister of Economic Affairs, do you feel the whole concept is very theoretical? Is it very broad for you to pursue the policy?
Well, I would not say it is theoretical, but definitely, as I said before, it is challenging. It is challenging because G&H must also thrive. G&H must also be sustainable. G&H must also be profitable. But the present market structure, the present trading structures, the present business models are all crafted based on the GDP model. So if G&H has to thrive and if G&H has to integrate into the system, it challenges us to be more creative in coming up with creative business models and create different special market systems. So in that sense, it is challenging. But we are hopeful because we see a lot of initiatives around the world who aligns with what we believe in G&H.
Like what? Business alliance or alliance from other countries? Can you give me some example?
Like now there's a lot of talk on green economy. In fact, our economy is also, we have this aspiration, the goal of our economy, that is the green economy. So in a way that sustainable development we are talking about, I think it aligns well with G&H, where the resources that we have in terms of minerals are not overly extracted, so that there is the sustainable use of these minerals. And that is being now greatly pursued by many countries. So that keeps us hopeful.
What's the GDP of Bhutan this year?
Our GDP is very small, a little over $1 billion.
Do you feel that you need to increase GDP, or you don't have to care about the figure at all?
No, but in this G&H, concept, we don't shut out economic development, and this is a clarification I'd like to make. Economic development is one of the important pillars of gross national happiness, along with culture preservation, good governance, and environmental ecosystem balance. So economic prosperity, economic progress is also part and parcel of gross national happiness. But this must happen in balance, in harmony with the other domains of gross national happiness.
When do you want to evaluate the well-being of people or the betterment of the economic situation of Bhutan? How do you say that? We get better because we have pursued GNH program. What's your evaluation?
Well, for a long time we had not tried to make an assessment or make an evaluation, but there had been some suggestions made by some experts, economists and experts, telling us to evaluate this gross national happiness within our own country. So in the past few years, we had then put in a very loose, rough evaluation system where we survey, we conduct a survey of the people to assess the happiness, sort of a happiness level. So we had done it for now the second time.
And what's the result of your asking people or your initial survey? Do you ask people directly whether are you happy with being Bhutanese citizen, or what kind of question do you ask people?
Actually, instead of asking direct question, we tried to make an evaluation of the conditions that people are in, which could give rise to happiness or unhappiness. So we evaluate on this conditions front. So for instance, people's knowledge on environment preservation. So the belief is if the people understand and appreciate that environment must be preserved, then it would in a way translate into actions, affirmative actions on actually preserving environment. So the survey questions would be along the lines of how do they see environment preservation? How do they have some indigenous skills in preserving our craft, for instance, or culture? So on those fronts.
Geopolitically, we see Bhutan surrounded by two big giants, China and India. How do you see position of Bhutan in terms of geopolitics in South Asia?
Well, Bhutan had for a very long time, for centuries in fact, is a peace-loving country, and all Bhutanese are peaceful, and not just with the neighbors, but they would like to be in peace with the plants around us, the trees around us, the flowers around us. So we had made efforts and to be good neighbors, both to our southern neighbor India and our northern neighbor China. So we have excellent relationship with all our neighbors, in fact.
Do you see it's quite a challenge for Bhutan to maintain good relations to both India and China, especially when Prime Minister Modi came to visit Bhutan, the first foreign visit for him after being Prime Minister, came to visit Bhutan, the first foreign visit for him after being Prime Minister. Does he want to send signal to China that he wants to get very close with Bhutan and he doesn't want China to be too close with Bhutan?
I'm not sure what Prime Minister Modi had in his mind when he chose to make Bhutan his first foreign country destination after assuming Prime Ministership. But definitely we are honored as a good neighbor, as a close friend of India, that the Prime Minister Modi had chosen Bhutan as his first country of visit. So we feel privileged and we are happy, in fact.
But economically, it's very important, isn't it, to have India as your strategic partner or economic partner, especially now Bhutan is exporting hydroelectricity power to India. So India must be very, very close friends.
Definitely, India is a very close friend of Bhutan, and that suits us, in fact, in economic and trade terms as well. Because as you know, Bhutan is a landlocked country, and therefore the only market, easy market that we can have is in the southern regions. And incidentally, the southern belt of our country is also more suitable for economic activity, because just across we have more than 1 billion people to whom we can sell our produces. So in that sense, India is a close friend, and it also therefore translates into deeper economic ties with them.
But to what extent Bhutan can get closer to China? In what fronts or in what economic area that you can develop more closer relations with China?
With China, we had always enjoyed cordial, good relationship, and now increasingly we find that many Chinese tourists are taking keen interest to come to Bhutan, and these things are happening. The only problem with China is that we have huge mountains that border us. So geographically, that is a huge challenge. But then we are breaking that barriers. We have Chinese tourists coming to us, and we have Bhutanese going to China for some trade as well. So it's happening, and although it is not as large in an extent as with India.
Are you afraid that the two giants will be crashed at some point, and Bhutan is somewhere in the middle?
We have tiny hands, so we will push them back again to their respective places. But seriously, we had continued to enjoy the goodwill of both the countries, and this is the same goodwill that we exude to both China and India.
In terms of having closer relations to Southeast Asia or Thailand, what do you think the two countries can develop closer relations?
With Thailand, again, Thailand is a special country for Bhutan. In fact, very soon we would be celebrating 25 years of diplomatic relationship with Thailand. And I say it's a very special relationship with Thailand because there are many things. Although Thailand and Bhutan is very different, Thailand is a very active country. Bhutan is a very quiet country. Thailand is a big country. Bhutan is a small country. The differences are there, but there are strikingly similarities between Thailand and Bhutan. For one, both Thailand and Bhutan enjoys the traditional Buddhist tradition. We have similarity on that spirituality front. Both Thailand and Bhutan reveres our kings and the royal family. So and over the years there had been a lot of people-to-people exchanges and contact between Thailand and Bhutan.
To increase economic power, do you see at some point in the future Bhutan can be more industrialized? Is it in your plan at all?
Well, there are pressures, but we have put in our own economic path, the economic direction that our country should take. And industrialization does not feature very prominently. As I said before, the path that we want to take is the green economy. Bhutan has been blessed with river systems that we have, rivers flowing from our steep mountains. And we are able to turn these rivers into very clean energy. And therefore today we have electricity generated by our rivers. And these are the cleanest energy in the world. And we have a lot of energy. And so we are able to sell this, export this to India.
Japan is sending teams of consultants to Bhutan to advise on pursuing G&H. Why do you need to rely on Japanese staff or Japanese experts on that aspect?
Well, I think Bhutan's gross national happiness philosophy has generated a lot of interest around the world. There are several countries who had visited Bhutan, wanted to know more about gross national happiness, and amongst them one is Japan. And in some of the areas and regions of Japan, in fact, they are already pursuing the well-being and then similar to the happiness concept that we have. So there are exchanges of people trying to share the experiences to each other. So on that front, yes, we are sharing. We are getting some advice from Japan, and Japan is learning from Bhutan as well.
Looking at Japan, do you see it's like turning back the clock, because Japan is a country which is very well known for industrialization and they are very, very successful economically. But now they are studying how to transform some part of their economy into G&H or into more sustainable. Do you think it's the trend for other countries in the future that they have to learn from Bhutan?
Well, there are many countries, like for instance Japan, who had gone through this journey of becoming very rich, very prosperous in terms of the GDP growth. And these countries, the friends from these countries come to us and they look at how we are doing in terms of our environment, in terms of our culture, in terms of our identity, in terms of the governance that we have. And they tell us that the path to prosperity doesn't have to be the path that these countries have taken. It can be the path that we are now taking. So they tell us that we are going the right path, in fact.
But do you think it will be possible for Japan if they just want to abandon GDP and to focus on G&H for a country like Japan? Would it be possible?
Well, I'm not sure whether it is possible or not, but what I am sure is that every country in the world must give it a thought and give it a consideration, because we are talking about just one planet. We are just talking about one Earth, and the resources there are finite resources. They will be exhausted, and we could exhaust them earlier on if you are not cautious, if you are reckless in the way that we use and abuse our Mother Earth. So I find that the future is sustainable development, the future is green economy, and Bhutan is persuaded, Bhutan believes that the future for our country is gross national happiness.
Do you think in practice it can really happen in Bhutan, because Bhutan population is not that huge? When you compare with other countries, you have 700,000 people. Let's say if we compare Bhutan with Thailand, Thailand have 64 million people, and now economic consultant teams are laying the groundwork for new economic policy of Thailand. What's the experience can you share with those people who are working in Thailand? Because Thailand has come so far in terms of industrializing the country.
I'm sure Thailand people are much more happier than Bhutan, so we would not be in a position to tell anything to the Thais. But in our own experience, we believe that the well-being and the happiness is not just in the material growth. There must be the spirituality in it. There must be the culture embedded there, and therefore we need to respect the environment around us, learn to live in harmony with the environment around us, have good social life as well.
Talking about happy people, we feel that Bhutan is very courageous to say that people of Bhutan are happy.
Bhutan's past leaders were convinced of the necessity of gross national happiness, and that required them to make courageous decisions. For instance, in our constitution we have written down that for all times to come we would have our 60% of our land would be under forest cover. So that is there in the constitution. No matter what government comes in place, we have to make sure that Bhutan is under forest cover. 60% of the land is under forest cover. So that's one. The second is we have also declared that we would be a carbon neutral country for all times to come. So that in itself shows what kind of economic direction we would have. Definitely then massive industrialization is not in our plate. Then small things that we do right now, for instance, we have a dream of, this government has a dream of making transportation, at least in the capital, on electric vehicles. So we are trying to promote electric vehicles. We'd like to have all our taxis running on electric vehicles.
You mean to get rid of the car with now consuming fuels?
We wish we could, and this is a dream we have, that the transportation here in Bhutan's capital must be on electric cars. We would not like to have cars running on fossil fuels. But having said this, as I said, this is our dream, this is our aspiration. We had now begun to make some initiatives. For instance, import of electric car is zero tax, and we have recently raised significantly the taxes on fossil fuel cars. So this kind of initiatives are underway, and it is difficult, but we are trying.
Bhutan is a very good example of sponsoring, supporting children for education and having medical care service for Bhutanese people. What's the proportion of the budget of the government that you have to invest in education of students? And do you set it as priority for Bhutanese government?
Two sectors which had received a huge budget. In fact, this would be the two budgets which has the most funding is on education and one is on health. And why do we do this? We do this because we believe that education must not be left just on the capacity of the parents to pay for education or not pay for education. Also for the health, should not be left on the monetary power of the people. The government, the state must take this responsibility to ensure that everybody, rich, poor, people living in the rural areas or urban areas, everybody gets access to education and access to health care. So we have free education and free health.
What do you see as the most precious asset of Bhutan? People, natural resources, or your identity?
I think it's the people, and it's the people with the right values. And if we're able to nurture this, then definitely we would have people who would respect the environment, who would respect the culture, and therefore would thrive the Bhutanese identity.
What's the role model? What is the country which is role model of Bhutan in pursuing development? Or you set yourself as pioneer, who is the very first in the world?
No, we find there are many countries who are doing much better than us on gross national happiness. Although they don't call it as gross national happiness, but many countries have picked up on this gross national happiness. In fact, we are learning a lot from these countries.
Like what? Like what countries?
There are many countries who are doing that, so we are learning a lot, and we are sharing our bit as well.
It means you don't see any particular country as your example or the path that you like to follow at all, like Switzerland, for example?
Mm-hmm. Definitely, in many countries there are aspects of gross national happiness. Some are doing very well in environment preservation, some are doing very well in cultural preservation, some are doing very well on good governance, and we are able to learn a lot, and these are best practices that we would always look up to.
What do you like to tell economic advisor in Thailand to learn from Bhutan? What can you share with us?
No, Thailand is already an economically very prosperous country, and our advice would mean nothing from a country who has just over $1 billion economy size. But definitely to remind the world that at the core of the development, we must not forget that it's human beings, and human beings do not become happy automatically just becoming rich. So there are other things that would make you rich, not just the material richness.
Are you concerned that now the world is consuming too much? The whole society, the whole global society?
For Bhutan, we are concerned, and we would like to play our part of not being overly exploitative and having this reverence to the nature, to the Mother Earth. This is what we are doing.
What do you see as the drawback or loophole of the policy of pursuing GNH?
Well, it is challenging to implement, and some people criticize it as being very abstract. not practical. But if all of us then say it is not practical and do not make an effort to implement, then it will be sad. And at best, whatever we could implement, we are trying our best because we think this is the future.
Minister, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you.
Thank you.